why don't you comment on the work of Joyce Carol Oates?
Joyce Carol Oates, I just mentioned Helen Vendler as a critic. Joyce Carol Oates is to creative writing what Helen Vendler is to criticism, in that Oates is someone who is not a bad writer when it comes to doing something where the ideas are supplied by someone else. I did a show on poetry translation recently. I'll give you a good metaphor. I asked a guy named Edward Snow, who's known along with Stephen Mitchell as one of the two best Rilke translators. And I asked him, I told him about my encounter almost 20 years ago with Stephen Mitchell, where I asked Mitchell, after seeing a book of poems that he had published that were just at best mediocre, they were technically okay, but they had absolutely nothing. They were emotionally and philosophically dead because they didn't have the demiurge of Rilke behind him. In a very similar way, someone like Joyce Carol Oates is a competent writer. She can string sentences together. She knows that when you're doing a story, whether it's a story she's writing for a national magazine, reportage, or whether it's a short story, or whether it's a novel, she knows that should not climax the book more than 90% in. But she's absolutely incompetent, totally unskilled with wordplay. I reviewed, I think, a couple of her books, and you look at her short stories. All of her short stories end in cliches. Uh, uh, T.C. Boyle is sort of the male equivalent of Joyce Carol Oates in this fashion, in that she, like he, just cannot get anything unique. If you were to go through all of Oates's writing, and I've read much of her reportage, a lot of her short stories, a little bit here and there of her longer fiction, there's nothing there. There's no there. There's no overarching Joyce Carol Oatesness. You can look at uh, Mark Twain and you know what this guy is about. You can look at an Ambrose Bierce. You can look at an Oscar Wilde. You can look at a Sylvia Plath. You know these people. With a Joyce Carol Oates, you don't know anything. And I mean that in the bad sense. You don't know anything about her ideas or her beliefs or anything. And she's a total cipher in that sense. And her writing is generic. So she's bad in the sense that on a scale of 1 to 100, if 65 is passing, she's in the 55 to 65 range. And that her writing is competent. It's just dead. It's like zombie writing. When I talk about a Foster Wallace or a James Fry or a Dave Eggers, these are guys who are totally incompetent. They can't even write sentences well. Oates can. Her sentences are just trite and inert. My wife Jessica always uses that. It's just writing. It's inert. That describes Joyce Carol Oates right to the nub. So yeah, that's Oates.
I had a conversation with somebody a few years ago who went on a rant against contemporary writing and contemporary art. He was saying how bad it is, how much there's so much garbage around, how it's just so stupid. And then he added at the very end, except for one writer, Joyce Carol Oates.
Well, that's a perfect example of people who are on the like dislike axis, and it is so damn hard to get off of it. I've had friends. I've interviewed some of these people. They've come to my poetry group. They've given lip service to the things that I've said about like and dislike. And then, if they send me an email and tell me about this movie or this book they've read, I'll say, "Well, was it any good?" I say, "Oh yeah, I liked it." I said, I didn't ask you whether you liked it. I asked, is it good or not? They cannot get past that. It's remarkable in a sense. They cannot get past that. And I don't, they've known me for years. They know that I'm going to get on them for that, but they just can't get past it. And I just don't know what can be done with that. I really don't.